feel more critical of myself when playing something that's like happy
Yeah.
than I do of playing something that's like a little more on the aggressive or sad side. And I think that's because like with the aggressive music and the dirge music, there is that element of humanity in it, and like it's okay to be imperfect. Like you can lay it out on the table raw, like all your emotions, and you can just go for it. And it doesn't matter so much as like to the perfection, but it's all about the emotion and the content behind it. Hi everyone, this is the Inner Voices podcast. We are your hosts today, William Satterfield and Josh L. Conley. Today we're going to be talking about how critical we can end up being as musicians and just how judgmental we can come off, even just to ourselves and other people.
Oh yeah. No, I think, one of the things that we were talking about earlier is just how, as a necessary sort of evil in our profession of when we practice, what we're really doing is being critical of ourselves about how bad this is, how this needs to be better, how that sounds awful. And I think one of the biggest things that we've started noticing a lot is that sort of judgmental, self-critical nature starts showing itself outwardly. It starts going from the practice room to, oh, that person can't play in two, or oh, that, like, you start really analyzing other people, and then it starts getting even to people who have nothing to do with music, or like you just start becoming more judgy as a person, which is hard to avoid.
And that's the episode for today, folks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I understand that. I wonder where the actual, like, the origins of being critical come from in music, because we all like start out as beginners, and for the most part when you're a kid and you start music, you're just like happy to be playing the instrument, hopefully, unless your parent is like making you play it.
Right.
And so you're like, oh, I have this new violin or this new cello that I get to like play and mess around with. And then it's kind of like, at what point do we start becoming super judgmental on ourselves, feeling like I failed this lesson or this performance or this teacher? And then at what point do we start showing that to other people, like, oh, like they could have done better at this lesson or this performance or this piece, or I could have done better at that. Like, it always starts, like, you're right, being critical with ourselves, and then we start being critical with other people from there.
Yeah, I think it's when we stop doing music for the sake of joy and we start doing it as a career, or we're trying to take it seriously. And I think I've noticed that, have you ever noticed when you're practicing something and you're practicing something not for a lesson, just for yourself, and you don't realize, like, there's no actual, like, there's not going to be any sort of outward test of your, how well you prepared, whatever, that you're just doing it for fun. Tends to go pretty well, and it tends to just, like, you tend to have fun, and it tends to be pretty good. But when you, like, start focusing all of your energy and, like, mental focus on, like, okay, I have to play this piece for this lesson, it has to be good, otherwise, the world's gonna come down crashing across me, and I think that when you start doing that, then it goes really badly sometimes. Like, yeah, I mean, sometimes maybe that pressure helps motivate you, but for me personally, the more I start freaking out about stuff like that and holding it tightly, then the more it goes down the drain in terms of the actual performance.
That makes sense. Because like while you're being critical on yourself, you start focusing on like the really, really small details of what you're doing wrong, and it makes like a sort of tunnel vision, so you forget the overall thing of like, oh, I'm playing music because...
Yeah, it's like debilitating almost.
Yeah, it really is. Like what in me finds the need to be overly critical about something that's just, it like almost doesn't even matter, like... Yeah.
It's almost, you start attaching this life or death sort of, it has to be good, because, and it's like the amount of it's not that I'm not saying this because I don't think music is important. I mean, we're dedicating our lives to becoming professional musicians. Of course we find classical music important, but I think we sometimes attach an importance that it, like, to the point of, you're a pilot, the plane's going down, and if you don't, do the right things, everyone's gonna die, including you. Like, I know sometimes it feels that way on stage, but we start kind of acting like it's a life or death surgery where if you cut the wrong artery, the patient's going to bleed out. It's, yeah, we overemphasize the necessity for perfection and intonation and perfect rhythm, and those things are important, and it's necessary. But the severity of importance that we attach to it is a little bit overblown, I think.
It is, like, you've heard me say this before, like, the difference between, like, this and this, it's, like, minuscule. You can't even see it, but when it comes to music, that, like, a difference that minute makes, like, a world of change. Like, even just tuning chords, like, if one person is the tiniest bit off, the chord's not going to resonate in the way that you want it to, and it'll like drive you up a wall trying to figure out why it's not coming out the way that like you anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
We do that, but like, how do we like not do that? How do we turn it off? Like, how do you turn it off?
I have a hard time with that. I think that a large part of it is, honestly, if you derive your entire value from music and being a musician, that is where we kind of run into problems. Because if your entire existence and essence of being is around being a musician, then of course having a bad lesson affects you on that deeply emotional, psychological level. Playing that one note wrong in a performance, is a reflection of you as a human being, because you're denoting that level of importance of being a musician. And again, this is not saying that you shouldn't care about being a musician. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, though, is that if you're gonna, I think the problem is that so many of us put our final, it's like it turns into your religion, basically. Like, it is the finality of everything in the world to you is playing this sonata in tune or playing this concerto right, or you know what I mean? It's just, it becomes your entire essence, and then therefore when things don't go as you expect, it's an attack on who you are as a person.
That is, if you're finding your identity in whatever your instrument or your musical profession is.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we fall into that trap sometimes. Yeah. So for me personally, it's realizing that all of us are more than just violinists, violists, cellists, conductors, pianists, whatever your instrument is, musicians generally. Like, yes, that is what we do as a profession, or that is what we love, but it's not the be all end all of our life. Because what happens if, tomorrow somebody mugs you and they break your hands and you irreparably, like, to a point of where you're never going to play your instrument again? Mm-hmm. What happens to you then? Like, I don't know. It's a little dark, but I'm just saying, it's like, it's not a healthy way to, I think that's where a lot of this stems from.
That makes sense.
What do you think?
I agree. To further that point, for me at least, something that helps me sort of leave work at work is thinking of it from like a different point of view. Like, for instance, if if I were to try something in a STEM field, which I have no idea about, no knowledge of, can't even begin to like talk about it basically, that, I don't know, would someone in like the STEM field like think critically of me if I was like trying my best at something and just to learn something that I enjoy learning about, like say about chemistry or physics, and if I misspoke, because I probably would, because I know nothing about those subjects, like, what would they think of me, and would that be valid considering that it's not my area of expertise or study? Like, if I was thinking that quickly of someone else who maybe their area of like study isn't music, but they just enjoy it and I'm just listening to them, like, do I have any right to criticize them just because they're doing something they love and they're not doing it as well as like a professional musician? No. So I try to think of it in a different perspective.
Yeah. That's
like for a very specific case, but that's one of the things I've come up like with in life.
Yeah. It's difficult to switch it off, because especially as an artist, generally you kind of tend to become fairly neurotic, and everything is also about, your art. And I think that tends to kind of, inflate your own sense of self-importance, or the self-importance of, or the importance of what you're doing about, I'm playing Tchaikovsky 6. It's his requiem at the end. He almost, he committed suicide after. People think it's his suicide note. I have to like, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, the dude's already dead. You playing it poorly is not going to cause him to rise from the dead and die again. Like, it's just, it's like, I think that music has really important things to share with us about life, and that's the beauty of it and the joy of it. But then I think when we deify it, that's when we start. It's a fine balance, right? It's like, or a fine line. It's like, enjoy it, appreciate for all of the amazing things that it has to offer, but don't cross that line of deification where you start deifying composers, or you start deifying certain works, or certain performers, and creating your entire world around that. I agree. Because then it impacts, if that's the mindset you're operating under. You see somebody playing who's not like, who might be a STEM major, for example, who's just playing violin on the side casually because they enjoy it, and you go, oh my gosh, they're not in tune. Their instrument is not, they didn't even tune their instrument properly. That's not how you play a dotted 16th note. You're tripletizing, blah 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 blah. Like, you immediately start getting all like, how dare you? Like, it's just like,
and like on the same side, like, how dare you? How do you?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, who are you to say that?
Yeah, it's probably like your teacher's thinking that about you.
Exactly. Yeah. Why do you think we tend to deify music so much? Like, what is it about? There's always that idea of like art and perfection, and like always seeking perfection in art. And where did it come from?
Wow, that's a deep question.
I've actually been wondering about this for a while, because I know, like, with early church music, that was the only music, like Gregorian chant and plain chant, and it was used for worship to glorify God. And there were so many things put into it, like rules about things must be in threes because it represented the Trinity, and only perfect intervals because tritones were the devil.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Does some of it stem from there, that like maybe music was like meant to be perfect and godly in a way, and that anything that doesn't reach up to that is sort of failure?
Perhaps. I mean, yeah, I guess that would make sense, because if like the final...
Oh, sorry, just to clarify that, like Western
Western
tradition.
Of course.
Speaking of that.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose that sort of makes sense from the point of view, if you think about like the final end, the end of the music is for the glorification of God, then anything less than perfection is imperfect worship. I don't know. Like, I could see how you could kind of get to that logically at the end. That makes sense.
Playing a Bach chorale out of tune is sacrilege.
Yeah. Every time we warm up with Bach chorales, we're going to be like, hey.
Sinning.
Jesus didn't die for this. But I think that's part of it, but I think it's also a larger question to human nature as well, because I mean, you find this not just in music, like as you said earlier, art generally, we try to strive for perfection. So like in sculpting, or in painting, or in ceramics, or in writing, or whatever other art form, people are still aiming for this perfection that we're talking about. And I think in terms of it going to a larger human need to, I don't know how to phrase this, but basically the need to, almost like a religiosity that we as humans intrinsically have. Like we whether for some people that is God, for others that is Mozart, for others that is, or just music generally, or for others that is, the great sculptors or painters. And I think because we as people inherently know, okay, this is going to get real depressing. We kind of inherently know that we're such a small piece of the cosmic puzzle in terms of the universe. Like, each of us is just a speck on Earth at this time in Earth. And in terms of this time in the vast range of human history, or just Earth's history, we're a speck within that. So we're a speck within a speck, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of all inherently know that. And I think in order to find purpose and meaning, we tend to, as humans, try to find something that's transcendent. That's what's the word? Eternal, yeah, and that's sublime. That we can kind of shuttle our energies and efforts and our hope into. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why we tend to, whatever art form or whatever, just something that we consider to be the greater purpose of our life. And I think that's why we tend to do that. It's because we all kind of inherently know that we're just kind of a cosmic, just speck in time.
So, in a sense, looking for like perfection to create immortality for yourself in a way, to live past your like human boundaries. Perhaps,
yeah, to a degree. I think, I think obviously partially part of it is immortality, but I think it's also just the desire of finding purpose, like a greater purpose to your life and meaning. Like, I think everyone's looking for some sort of meaning in their life. And yes, that might be like finding that through immortality or whatever, but I think maybe it's not necessarily... Okay, here's what maybe this is the order of operations in terms of thought. It's that because we as humans need to find a greater purpose in our life, we find that purpose in, let's say for our example, music. Mm-hmm. And because we attach our greater purpose, like, this is why I'm here, this is my whole reason for being on this earth is creating this music. It's that level of importance you're placing on it that requires and demands the perfection that people start striving towards. So I don't think it's that the perfection comes first. I think it's maybe that it's because people identify that as a larger, as their sort of thing in life. That's not very profound, but you know what I mean?
I get it, yeah.
What are your thoughts as you've been thinking on this week?
Sorry, it's just like a broad topic.
I know, it really is.
It gets into a lot of things.
You could go like this way, that.
I know, I'm just trying to figure out which direction I want to go in. Maybe start generally. Let's see. I think... I agree with you, yes. I'm just like thinking of different avenues of agreeing with you.
Or you can disagree.
Or I can choose to just disagree with you right now.
It's probably more interesting if you disagree, honestly.
My original thoughts were stemming from like the relationship between music and the church and just art in the church. Like most art was either commissioned, at least in Western classical tradition, was like commissioned by the church, preserved by the church. Mm-hmm. So it has like religious connotations. So that was my idea, that like maybe we feel the need in classical music for perfection because it's like so tied to like the sacred, the idea of something sacred and like something being perfect.
How would that work though in the context of musicians who are not religious? Like a musician who's fiercely atheist. Because in that sense, then they don't attach any sort of importance to that sacredness because they don't believe in the purpose that the music was made sacred for.
I think even if you don't agree with it, it's still there. I think somehow it's like ebbed into like the tradition.
Right.
Perhaps... I'm trying to think of a piece to describe it. Like there is something like otherworldly about a Mahler symphony or Beethoven symphony, and like what you believe aside, you feel it. Like it'll grip you, and there's something divine about it and like otherworldly, and I think that's what would grip everyone when it comes to music. I'm not sure how it relates though. I'm just spitting off the top of my head.
Yeah. You know, and so it's weird because I agree, but I think there's also a weird juxtaposition in the sense of that music, like, you know, like you listen to a Mahler symphony, or for me, I don't know why the finale of Tchaik 6 has been on my mind.
Have you been playing it?
No, it's I don't know why, it's just something about it just, yeah, it grips me. But for me, it's weird because there's something, yes, divine and unearthly about it, but at the same time there's something strangely human and concrete about it, because I listen to it and I'm like, you know, if you think about, for those of you who might not be as familiar, Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony, a few days after he wrote it, he passed away, and, you know, apparently it was because he drank bad water, but the real kind of conspiracy was because Tchaikovsky was gay and he was found sleeping with a prominent member of the Communist Party's son, and so they kind of, the kind of, not conspiracy, but yeah, I guess conspiracy is that they kind of ordered him to kill himself to like kind of save face for everybody. And so some people believe that Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony is a suicide letter, basically, like his suicide note. And you can kind of hear that because like the third movement ends really like, you know, just like sounds like the finale of a symphony, and then the fourth movement is just this heart-wrenching sort of requiem, basically. And anyway, so with all that context aside, I was listening to, just with that kind of thought in my head of just like the pain and the suffering and the emotional distress that he must have been feeling about having to, you know, take his own life for who he was, and, you know, just kind of that whole just human emotion. But there is something, and I don't know if it's just because it's being transmitted sonically, that kind of, there is an element of divinity within there too. So it's a weird juxtaposition, because it's like, yeah, it's like, I agree with you that there is something divine and something sublime about like great music like that, but there's something strangely human about it that like is relatable.
Well, it is being written by humans.
Yeah, right. No, exactly. No, I know. But like, that's why it's like, you know, it's like packed with like such human emotion, and it gives so much about the human condition in the notes that are being played. I don't know.
Maybe that's the beauty of it. It's always like the profane reaching for the sacred, the human trying to reach perfection, and
maybe
there's something in that journey that like grips us, because everyone excuse me, everyone has that like journey in their own life. Like, yeah, it doesn't really, it differs like between everyone, but everyone is always striving towards something that they want, or that that is their end goal. Yeah, so it's relatable.
Yeah, no. Oh, sorry, it's just, that symphony just depresses me so much. I just love it. So good.
That's another thing. Why do musicians love depressing things? Why is it always like the depressing music that grips us? Actually, I'm asking this in
like a serious, like,
seriously, and also in the context of, because I know the music that we like to listen to.
Yeah.
So we tend to pick very serious music.
Yeah.
We haven't picked anything in like a major key in a while to play quartet-wise. So that's sort of an offshoot of the conversation, huh?
I don't know. Maybe it has to do with our age. We're edgy. We like edgier music, but I don't know.
Young edgy quartet plays edgy music.
I think it has something to do, because like, you know, I think of a Mozart symphony, you know, and it sometimes like it just sparks such joy and such, and it's weird. Maybe it's longing for, like, that sounds really bad, but like, okay, I'm thinking about within the context of each of our respective lives, like all of us have gone through, like speaking about the four of us as a quartet, we've all gone through, you know, some trials and tribulations, not all of it, like, you know, but I think all in all, the four of us have had pretty good lives. You know, we weren't growing up with the threat of being thrown into a Russian gulag, or, you know, something like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, just kind of contextually speaking, when you look at the rest of history, not too bad. Doesn't mean we haven't had our problems. But I think because of that, listening to this music that was written by composers who were going through some of this intense, just horrifying things, it grips us because of that, because we haven't experienced that, but because it's still human emotion, we can understand it, and we want to just like, it draws us because it's something different and it's something we haven't experienced, versus like kind of the happy-go-lucky stuff. It's really amazingly joyful, and it explores another emotional realm of our emotions, but it's not as interesting because that's been most of our life, if that makes sense.
I see. Yeah.
One moment. I've got to change the camera. I'll be right back. Mm-hmm. What were we talking about? Why do we like depressing music?
Okay, personally, for me at least, I find happy music takes more energy to play.
It does. It really does.
In a completely different way. I mean, you can play like some grueling Shostakovich where you really have to like lay out your soul.
Yeah.
Or like some Prokofiev. Like, it's mainly the Russian composers that I'm into. But then when it comes to playing a really peppy Mozart or a Haydn,
hard.
I need stamina for that.
Yeah. Like, it's, yeah, you're right. That's so right. Maybe it's because it's not like natural to us. Because it's
Why isn't it natural though? Like, it's happy music. Like you said, we're even-keeled people. We haven't experienced like great tragedy in life. And you think that like the emotion of like happiness should be like an easy one for us to portray, but why does it take so much more to be like light and airy and charming than it does to be the opposite?
You know, I wonder if this kind of goes back to your question about like kind of the divine within music. I would almost argue that the happy stuff is more divinic than, is that a word? Is more divine than the depressing, sorrowful stuff, because I think the depressing, sorrowful stuff is more representative of
the human
experience.
Okay.
And the just extreme, sublime, happy, just, you know, sometimes you hear a Mozart recapitulation, like going back into it's a retransition going back into the oh my gosh, my theory's failing me, into the recap. Thank you, sorry. And it's just a scale that just like somehow just gets you back into the key that you're supposed to be in. And it's the simplest thing in the world, but it sparks such like incredible joy from its simplicity. It's like that's Haydn, but you know.
I mean, going back to like the topic at hand, I feel more critical of myself when playing something that's like happy than I do of playing something that's like a little more on the aggressive or sad side. And I think that's because like with the aggressive music and the dirge music, there is that element of humanity in it. Mm-hmm. And like it's okay to be imperfect. Like you can lay it out on the table raw, like all your emotions, and you can just go for it. And it doesn't matter so much as like to the perfection, but it's all about the emotion and the content behind it. Yeah. Whereas with happy music, there's sort of like, you have to hold yourself in a different way. Yeah. You have to feel the music differently. There's an element of charm and lightness and happiness that should look proper and perfect and should like sparkle. And that, at least to me, is difficult. Yeah,
it's incredibly difficult. Mm-hmm. You're right. I was just thinking about, you know, in the gig we played a few days ago, we were playing just a bunch of random music, and two of the pieces we played, one was by was the first movement of Prokofiev's second quartet, and another was the fourth movement of Haydn's Opus 20 number 4, which is a kind of a happy piece. Mm-hmm. And I just remember when we did the Prokofiev, we were just like, and it was just like, it was so much easier to do that. Like it felt good doing it, and I felt it sounded pretty good because we were all just like laying into it and just like kind of just, and then we got to the Haydn, and that took even more energy for some reason, because it would just have to be like, it's almost, I feel like you have to act more. Like you have to put yourself in the shoes of an actor even more playing the happy music than you do playing, and maybe it's because like even though we have lived in relatively great times, we still know what it means to suffer, because we've each had our own like tragedies in life. Like tragedy might be a strong word, but like our own sadness, like moments of turmoil and sadness that we can kind of use as a latching point for that kind of emotion. Yeah. Whereas like, I know all of us have probably been happy, like real happy at points, like, you know, you're in a new relationship, or you're or you're this or that. But that there's I feel like there's just something even, I feel like like that type of happy music goes one step further than what the human what a human is able to experience, whereas the darkness of some of the darkest music is really just at like humanity is the one pushing the boundaries of that versus it's like something more divine that's pushing the boundaries of the happy stuff. I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
kind of get it, yeah.
Wait, I don't know.
It also, like, it could just be because it's easier to feel, it's a lot easier to feel negative emotion rather than, like, positive emotion.
That's true, yeah.
in a lot of cases, unfortunately.
Dun 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 dun.
Like, it's easy to lay into, like, those negative emotions for pieces. Like, if you just need, like, a character to latch onto, because we've all been frustrated.
Yeah.
We've all been angry at something before. We've all felt sadness or heartbreak. And, like, it's sometimes easier to recall those, like, traumatic emotions than it is to recall the happy ones and just build them up in the moment.
That's true, because think about it. If you did a performance and you played everything perfect except one note was just horrendously out of tune.
You remembered that one note.
All you care about is that horrendously out of tune. Even though 99.9% of that performance was just perfection, it doesn't matter. Like, it's all garbage.
We're so critical as musicians. Why is it so difficult to focus on the 99% good instead of the 1% bad? Why do we want 100% all the time? Who made that rule? Yeah.
Because that's not what life is.
Yeah, it really isn't.
It's really not life. Like, yeah, it's strange. It's strange. I don't know.
That's why I find it difficult, just like on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, to like focus on the positives, especially because we're in that area in our career where we're like, you know, just starting out, baby quartet, like planning our career, trying to make the right steps, learn the right things, and it's so easy to want everything to go perfectly.
Yeah.
Like, you plan everything 10 steps ahead, 5 years in advance. You're like, we gotta do this, and we gotta get there. Mm-hmm. And everything has to like go perfectly or else we'll fail.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to focus on the things that go wrong because every little thing that goes wrong you think is going to stop you from getting to your end goal, when really it's just a minor detour. That if you look at all the positive, because there's been so much positive going on in this journey that it's actually quite astounding, and it's like amazing to think about. But it's also really easy to just focus on the one negative thing that happened in the week or in the day. And then we forget, like, wow, we have this great opportunity to be where we are with the people we're with, to play this wonderful music and study with these amazing people. Like,
yeah, I've been finding that recently. Like, I mean, we can cut this out if we want to, but speaking in a more general sense, in the past few weeks and months have been difficult as a quartet. Like, we've had hardship. It's difficult bringing 4 people together who have very strong opinions about everything from how to rehearse to what to rehearse to just, you know, what to play, just everything, to intonation, rhythmical idea. Just, we all have very specific thoughts and ideas. And we've been trying to synthesize them into one voice, which is extraordinarily hard to do. And we've only been doing this for the past 2-3 months. And, you know, it's been a grind for all of us. But I do remember earlier in the summer when we first kind of started rehearsing more regularly. And I think it helped that all we were doing was quartet. I know we don't really have classes, but we do have other obligations. You know, we have our lessons, we have our coachings, we have studio, we have, you know, our gigs, yada, yada, yada. Our schedules are pretty busy. It's hard I remember back in the summer, I was a lot more grateful and I had a lot more gratitude for what you just said, that I'm with 3 other amazing human beings, musicians, friends, colleagues, that we have this opportunity to be here with these amazing teachers, these amazing opportunities, etc. And like, when I was in that state of mind, like, I could let the little things go, not in the sense of letting my standards slip, but just kind of being more like, it's a process. Mm-hmm. And There's so much good going on. As long as we continue that upward trajectory, we're good. It does, you know, some days might be bad. It might be a little bit like this, but as long as we're just continuously heading in the same direction, great. Whereas for some reason during the school year now, I think also because our time now has become so much more constricted, and so every second counts a lot more. Mm-hmm. It feels a lot more like if this rehearsal doesn't go well, then the world's going to end. Because we have our schedule so tightly packed where it's like, if this rehearsal goes bad, this rehearsal is the only rehearsal we get to rehearse this, this, and this. We have to play this and this and this for this, that, and that. And then that and that and that is supposed to lead to this, that, and that. Yeah, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like where everything is self-reliant on reliant on the other thing going well, on like previous conditions. So if one little thing in the chain breaks, the entire structure collapses.
Effect.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah, domino effect. And so then there's no room for gratitude. There's only room for do your job, get this right, do this, do that. Like, you know, why aren't you doing this? Why are you, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. You know, one of my teachers once told me that quartets that do really well are quartets who have really even keel people in them.
So we're the problem, basically.
It's us. We're the problem.
June and Heather are very even-keeled, and I think it's mainly you and I who are the most, like, type A.
Type A, yeah.
Plus.
Yes. Although, I will say, they know this, but, like, we do it because we care so much.
I know.
Maybe we care a little too much sometimes.
Or maybe we care in the wrong way.
That could be it, probably.
Yeah.
Where was I going with this? Yeah, even keel people in a quartet, because like it helps just let like water kind of roll off your back and be like able to be flexible and able to make changes right away and just go with the flow, because nothing about like the career path we've chosen is very stable.
Yeah.
We're basically running a small business that we have to like make a place. We have to carve out a place in like the music world where like we can do what we love.
Yeah. Well, I just think that someone who was like the epitome of that for me that we met over the summer was Masumi. And Masumi is the former violist of the Pacifica Quartet, and he's now a professor of viola at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester. And we met him at a summer festival called Music in the Vineyards a few months ago. And he's just, like, during rehearsals, a lot of these rehearsals were pretty high stress because we had, like, one rehearsal. Or we had two rehearsal. Yeah. Like, and each rehearsal, like, because, like, for example, we did Vivaldi Four Seasons. Each soloist got, like, half an hour to, like, rehearse their thing before they had to perform it with. So, like, you know, it's pretty stressful. And Masumi was just the most relaxed. Like, it's funny because you could almost mistake it for apathy or for... It's a weird balance because it almost is apathy, but it's like you're being relaxed because you do care. It's slightly counterintuitive because it's like you think like, I need to care about this so much. Like, I need to be in this. I need to be like, you know, if I see someone doing the wrong bowing, I need to call them out and tell them that they suck and they just, what are they doing? Because I care so much. But then it's like, that's more ego, really, honestly. Like, if you think about it, that's an ego-driven thing versus... Like, you know, I'm a member of a team and I want the team to succeed. And so by kind of stepping back and allowing things, you know, supporting what needs to happen more passively rather than feeling the need to be up in front of everything, I feel like that's kind of what Masumi was doing. And it helped kind of, because like sometimes it got really tense in those rehearsals and he would just crack a joke and like the tension dissipated. But like someone might think like, he's cracking jokes, he doesn't care, he's horrible. It's like, no, actually, I think that's something he probably learned from quartet about kind of learning how to not die on every hill.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's what makes a great collaborator, and yeah, I love that. I love watching that in rehearsal. It was like a good lesson, and it was eye-opening, and it kind of made me realize like, oh, it doesn't always have to be so serious. Like,
yeah.
Every note does not need to be a point of contention.
Yeah.
And it's okay to move on from things even when they're not perfect yet. Because eventually you'll get there. You might not get there in the day, but you don't have to die on that hill.
Yeah. I think that comes from, we have a really bad misconception that has been given to us as musicians about like what it means to be a great musician, because I think we have the image of like one person coming to mind is like Carrion, right? Where just this uncompromising, absolute just pillar of like, this is what I want and I'm gonna get it no matter if I have to keep the orchestra here for 5 hours over the rehearsal time, blah 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 blah. Like, it's gonna be the way I decide. Like,
Some
you know,
of you may die.
yeah, but it's
But
a
I'm
sacrifice
okay
I'm willing to make. Yeah, no, it's that kind of, you know, and there's something that like, you know, we look at that and go, oh, that's so cool. Like, they're so hardcore. They care so much. Ugh. But like, I think with very rare exceptions, it doesn't work.
Yeah, we tend to deify that so much when really it just kills the love of music. You like crush other musicians, like their hopes and dreams while doing it, and their will to like play the music for you. Like if you're always like smashing someone upside the head for not playing the way that you want them to, or with you, or going with your vision, like they're not going to want to follow you.
Yeah. No, you know, it's funny because I remember this was back when I thought that I initially primarily wanted to be a conductor. There was this anime called Nodame Cantabile. And there's a live action series. I actually never watched, I know this is sacrilegious. I've never watched the actual like anime, like the animated. I only watched the live action.
How dare you?
I know, it's sacrilege.
How dare
But
you?
the main character, Tsuaki, who's a pianist turned conductor, he was I'm not going to use any foul language, but he was a not nice person a lot of times. Like, I remember there were funny things where he's like conducting the orchestra and you hear his inner monologue. It's like, this is bad. Should I stop it?
Okay.
Or should I
Wait now. You can't say that you haven't had that inner monologue.
Oh, no, of course not. Of course I have. We all have. But the thing that's like insane is that like I remember very clearly telling my friends back in high school, like, that's who I want to be like. like I would show them this clip and be like, that's my goal in life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just that sort of, and I think that like that sort of image is not right, and it doesn't lead to a healthy way of being a musician. It's not good. It doesn't work, especially when, I think it only works if you're going to be a dictator. And even as an orchestra conductor, that doesn't really work anymore. Like maybe back in the 40s and 50s, you could get away with that and by yelling and being a tyrant over your orchestra, but that doesn't work anymore in orchestras. Orchestras will fire your butt real fast if you do that. Yeah. And so like now, the name of the game is not how much of a tyrant can you be, it's how much of a collaborator you can be, as you said.
Because no one's going to want to work with you if you're a jerk to everyone, like all the time. And even if you are that talented, you're never that talented that you can be a jerk to someone. Yeah. There's no amount of talent in the world. Yeah. Eventually it'll catch up to you.
It'll catch up to you real fast. All right. We're at about 40 minutes.
Okay. How do we end this on a positive note?
I don't know.
What lesson can we share with our audience who have so kindly stuck with us up until now?
Yeah, again, we should do something where it's like, if you've come this far, here's our secret message of the day for being such OGs. I don't know. What do you think is a good lesson of the day?
Don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
I know it's not like the easiest thing, and you're in a lesson and your teacher tells you just relax. Yeah. Like you can't do it. It's counterintuitive. But maybe, I don't know, just keep it in the back of your head when you're out in the world. Not even like while you have your instrument in like hand, just like while you're buying groceries or like driving or just doing something, like maybe observe what you're thinking. Like, am I being overly critical on this person who didn't use a turn signal?
Oh yeah, I did that all the time.
Like, or am I being overly critical on how this person bags groceries or how my friend is speaking to me? Like, am I overanalyzing this because I am so used to overanalyzing myself?
Yeah. I agree. I think kind of the main lesson for the day is sort of recalibrating what is truly important enough to the point where you need to speak up for it. You know what I mean? Like, what is really the limit where you need to say something? In the sense of, I think what I mean is that I think we've all calibrated that level too high, where it's like, someone bags your groceries, like they don't double bag your milk or something. Like, oh my gosh, they're just did it. Like, and we all I think we've all had that calibrated too high. And it's like, calibrate that lower. It's like realizing like, okay, what are the actual things where if someone does something that's illegal, immoral, unethical, then maybe, yeah, like that's something that you need to be like, no, or you need to speak up about. But I think like, at least when it comes to quartet playing or music generally, like, yeah, you're like, I'm thinking the worst thing so far that could have happened to us is like a colleague shows up 15 minutes late, like because they overslept or something. And that has that ever even happened yet to us? I'm sure it will, but I don't think that's even happened. But like, is that immoral? No. Is it unethical? No. Is it illegal? No. Like, is it inconsiderate? Yeah, a little bit, but most of the time, unless it's chronic, it's a one-time mistake, and we all make mistakes. Mm-hmm. But like a lot of us will jump on that and be like, how dare you? You are the reason why we're failures. I'm just kidding.
And we also just have to be able to put ourselves in that person's point of view. Like maybe they were like super, super tired, or they just weren't feeling well, or they have like a ton of things on their mind that are keeping them from sleeping. Like,
or their neighbors were yelling at 3 a.m. about how they're not ready to settle down or something. True story. Anyway. Yeah. I think maybe just let's all be a little bit more humble. Let's all recalibrate our expectations of what are things to die on a hill for and what are not. And yeah. Is there anything else you got for us?
Oh, here's an Easter egg. And you can cut this one out. But the true story, though, this is for all of you who have stayed this long. You get to hear the funny story of how Heather and I could not sleep 2 nights ago because outside of our window there was a girl and her alleged boyfriend yelling at each other at 3 a.m. for an hour. And said female was yelling, and I quote, "I don't catch feelings. I don't catch feelings. I am not going to get married at age 20. And while I can approve of the message, yeah, you're in school, independent young woman, yeah, but if you have to yell at a guy at 3 a.m. outside my window that you have not caught feelings, I think it's too late. You have caught feelings. You should be at home asleep. And more importantly, I should have been asleep. No. Thanks, I just needed to rant about that. I'm still bitter and a little salty about that. That's the Easter egg story that you get for sticking with us.
That's this week's Easter egg. Thanks, folks, for joining us. We'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Goodbye.